record at walking so long. We both brought our purses on like Margaret Atwood at the Oscars.
Oh,
Or Emmys. You guys see that? Margaret Atwood brought her purse on the stage when she got her Emmy.
These people just watched this intense movie and we're all chatty from that lobby.
Yeah.
We talked about like 29 different things while we were waiting. So
We'll talk about we'll
super
tell you what those
intense
are.
movie vibe. We're gonna get into it right now.
Yes. Okay, so back there you were saying you weren't used to the experience of being like like the actor after a movie ended, right? Have you acted in anyone? Have you another movie? Have you acted in someone else's movie before?
Yes, one other time, Jesus' Son. I had a small part in that. Yeah.
I remember that part.
I remember leaving the theater. I went to Telluride to see that movie, and now at the time I didn't understand like how stressed out Allison McLean, the director, must have been. This is not a hearing for that. So I should warn you, I am so sleep deprived right now. I'm just gonna skid.
Yeah.
So no more on that.
Yeah.
Questions?
So, what made when you were approached to be in this film? When you were approached to be in this film, what made you say yes?
Oh, right. Well, Josephine I'd actually first gotten an email from my agent saying, this person wants to adapt your novel, The First Bad Man, and here's some links to her work. And me and Mike watched those links, and we were like, whoa, who is this? These are so weird, and we really talked about them a lot, and I was like, no, I actually don't want anyone to adapt that, movie. That would drive me crazy if that book became a movie, but you're an interesting director. And then a few months later, she approached me about acting in it, and I remember saying, like, that woman asked me to be in one of her movies. I guess I could then see how she makes them if I did that. Which is really my only thought, which was a little problematic because then it was like right before I was supposed to go do it, and it suddenly hit me like, you're not just going to be like on set watching her, you're going to have to actually act. And like, these are lines you didn't write, and like a character that is, I don't know, it seemed like this massively, like I initially was like, how could I be her? I'd have to have been like a teenage mother, and then I like did the math, and I'm like, oh no. Totally old enough. Yeah.
So, how was the experience of acting? Like, how did the learning curve just happen?
Right. Well, I should say I quit. The part that I cut off, I stopped myself before, was that I got so freaked out that I wrote her really seriously at like 1 a.m. one night. And I was like, I am so sorry. As a director, I know how much this sucks. Actually, I don't know what's ever done this to me. I'm so sorry. And I pulled out. And she didn't try to stop me, and we were talking about it, and I was like feeling better. I was talking to her, and I was like, maybe I could be a producer on it, and she'd be like, yeah, that was cool. And I said, God, I feel almost wistful, What an asshole. And she like took that, I think she saw her little opening, and she was suddenly like, Miranda, you could die walking out the door right now. Like, fear could rule your life, or not, And she just kind of launched into this really hardcore, speech. And I remember I was standing in the bathroom listening to her, watching like tears roll down my face, thinking like she doesn't realize, she's just talking on and on, doesn't realize like I'm gonna do it. Like, could have stopped a while back. Yeah.
And was fear was the main card she pulled out to get you?
Yeah, it was just like, what's a little fear? What's a little terror in the scheme of things, you know? Like, and I was like, oh, right. And the other thing I realized was every time I talked to her, I was kind of under a spell and I felt fine. And I thought, oh, I will never not be under her spell in the course of making this movie. I don't have to make it alone at 1 a.m. in front of my computer. Like, that's the rest of my life. Yeah.
So was it fun getting to be around people and have like?
It was the best thing ever. I was really so. I think I texted you during it a lot. Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah.
I just totally loved the whole thing. Yeah. No, like, compared to the rest of my life, so little pressure, and just you just get to have all your feelings, and people are really nice to you, and it really made me understand, like, why people act, and understand like the experience of the actors I work with in my movies so much better, and that was sort of why I was doing it. Like, I remember coming. You really don't have to ask any questions, right? I just talk on and on and on.
No, I mean, this is my master plan.
Okay, you're doing it. I remember having this thought. It seemed deep at the time. It may not work that well, but it was that I was making movies the way a person might be doing higher math without ever having learned to count to 10. Like, I didn't understand the basic unit of measurement of movies, which was like the actor and how it feel, you know, what performance really is in that medium.
You were like Rain Manning it up until then.
I mean, I don't want to either overpraise myself or sell myself short, whichever one that is.
Or not Rain Man.
Yeah, or not Rain Man.
So do you think, so was it a different experience acting in this in your own films, like as?
Oh yeah. I don't know what, gosh, I mean, let us not speak of the other conduct. It just seems so different to me. I'm like not even, I'm just sort of doing the, I don't know, it's like when you're, like, we'll put on a show and I'll be the main character because there's no one else to do that, and then, okay, you do this, and then, like, I'm like thinking about everything else, and the acting part is like last on the list, whereas you want a person who's like, that's all they're there for. Yeah.
An actor. How much of it was, what was the process like? Did you guys improvise a lot?
Well, I will say I worked really hard to learn my lines, and I was glad, and that was like hard for me. I wasn't like a real actor who's like, oh, give me a sec. Oh yeah, I got it. And no, I was like, you know, like a while before learning them. And yeah, I always had to know them because there's another person and you have to know when to take your turn.
You have tricks for learning.
Now I'm really good for my turn.
That technical term.
I never said I was good, I just said it was fun.
Did you have tricks for learning your lines?
No, just like again and again doing it, yeah. And I did it, I practiced with my friend Amber. You know, Amber, she would run them with me.
I feel like there's not many, I feel like you can tell that you're not normally just an actor because you want to make sure the audience knows that you learned your lines.
They never emphasize that. So proud of it, still. Everyone I learned. This is really not good for my burgeoning acting career. That's fine.
Full of agents. But so after you learned your line, was there also an improvisational?
There was we had one rehearsal thing that was a little like the theater troupe. You know, it's like I come into this thing and all these people have been doing this stuff together, you know, for years. So they're like, yeah, now we're going to do the thing where we, I mean, I can't even explain it, but they were super interesting, and the kind of, when Starly and I rewatched the movie with her the other night, and I remember whispering like, it was like that. I really just had to go with it, no judgment, you know? Because it's the kind of like real theater, like, you know, just make a sound and a shape and like, you know, you might be touching like a sweaty guy and, you know, stuff like that. And which is fine, you know, I'm from Berkeley, like, but like because of that, I like tried to distance myself, you know, and then I was like, oh, hello, old friend, you know, I can do this. And I'm into it. I liked that about her. It's like, that was partly why when I met with Josephine, I was like, oh, this, if you were ever going to trust your life with someone, you actually don't want like some impressive Hollywood dude. Like you want, I personally, this is the kind of person that makes me feel safe, you know.
Sweat.
Yeah, and a woman and like someone who's like going to talk about feelings. Yeah. So we did some of that stuff, and that's it. We didn't do any rehearsal. I didn't. You know, I had just met my daughter, like the day before. You know, when we started.
Like the day before, and then you were her mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you feel like her mother?
Well, I decided that like the mom of a teenager might feel pretty out of the loop, you know, and that was okay. So I was constantly trying to figure out like, is she kidding? Is she, you know, like, or is she acting? Is she not? Like I felt super unsettled and unmoored, and like, is she being mean or not? You know, and I decided that was good. Like at first I was kind of like, this is scary, you know. And then I was like, use it. But they do. You know?
You had to do you had to act while driving, right?
I remember when we were watching it the other night, and I was in the car. Starly's like, "You were really driving, weren't you?"
You have no idea how dangerous this movie actually was.
Yeah, and I didn't tell anyone on the set what a bad driver I was. I actually didn't even tell Mike later that I had driven in the movie in New York City.
It's chilling watching it as someone
car.
who's been in a real car with you.
Yeah.
Like, this movie's like almost an action movie.
I'm so proud. Yeah. No one ever just took it for granted.
Yeah. That's another thing. They took it for granted that you learned your lines and that you could drive. Which is why it's good that I'm asking questions, because people would miss these details. They would just assume that people can do. I don't think all actors learn their lines, by the way. Earpieces, right?
Okay.
Tell me that.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, my actors.
Yeah. People with higher pay grade aren't learning their lines.
Oh, really? It is, yeah.
We don't like it. We look down on
Yeah.
that. But and then were some of your scenes like were they like free form, or was it pretty much?
We do it as per the lines, and then Josephine, I'm trying to remember, she's so nice. Like she'd be like, oh, I love this. Oh, you guys. See, I'm acting as her now. And she's not here because she's shooting a movie right now, starring Elizabeth Moss and other great people. I mean, whoa, you know, so rare that a woman's movie is coming out and she's directing another one. It's just a rare special thing.
Well, that seems like also like it's kind of a wild time we're in right now, right? In terms of women filmmakers.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Things are getting financed. Yeah. I mean, let's not go crazy. Is right. A lot of things.
We know one movie is getting financed.
Yeah. So she's very kind and gentle, and just the best example of like setting people free by making them feel good and feeling confident. And so, yeah, she said, I was telling you all the nice things she'd say, and then I was like, I wonder if all that was true in retrospect, you know, but it didn't matter. Like at the time, you know, it totally worked. I was like, gosh.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter if it works.
Yeah, and she did let me, like you know, the crutch of writing stayed through the movie, and when she let me improvise, I was very happy, and felt like I could do those lines a little better, just because that's what I'm used to. Because I did.
I mean, it wasn't. Yeah, I mean, because also sometimes it seems like the nature of the film allows for just. Like, it's such a free film that it feels like it's not, like, there's scenes that seem like, they seem improvised, not because it's like even an improvement, but like that's what the space of it allows. Yeah.
I know, I mean, watching it back with you, I was like, I kept wanting to say, like, it wasn't this weird when we were shooting it, you know? Like, I don't, you know, you don't have a sense of what the camera's doing, or I don't, and I wouldn't have, I would guess something more normal. Like, you think that you were in the frame more.
Right. Well, like watching it, you imagine like the camera is literally like doing loop-de-loops around you, like leaving around and flying.
Yeah, like I didn't feel blurry.
Yeah.
You know? So we weren't actually dissolving into each other. You know. So I think in that sense, it feels, you know, you do take after take of things and you make little changes, and there has to be blocking to some degree, but she's not. I mean, I am so much more controlling and focused on details, and she and I, if we were up here, you know, I like you so much, so no regrets there, but
I mean, it really would make sense for her. If she wasn't filming a movie, I feel like she would be up here.
Yeah.
I'm fine with being the placeholder.
Yeah, I saw her last one. I saw her off. She was on her way to go shoot her movie, and I was in the middle of shooting a movie. And we were kind of really quickly. She's like, "What do I need to keep in mind?" And I was sort of telling her things that I remembered from her movie that I was trying to keep in mind for my movie, and she was. She's so kind and just wants to see what'll happen, and I'm so want to see exactly the thing I have in my head, you know, and we'll like keep doing sort of micro adjustments towards that thing. And we both agreed we could use some of each other, you know, like I could, like step back a little and set people free, and she texted me the other day saying, I'm demanding every little thing I want, and it's really hard. And it is.
Yeah. It seems like a totally perfect trade-off. You guys Freaky Friday each other.
Yeah. Slightly.
Do you guys have
literally?
No. Do you think they thought I meant literally?
Okay. Yeah. What you doing?
We've got a question here.
Okay.
Hello, Miranda.
Hi.
I have loved your work so much, like since you were in college in Olympia, and you're just the best ever. But what I was wondering, especially watching this film, and as a person that also deals with the title mental illness, and really just wanting an artist community, much like Nan Goldin's The Ballad of Sexual Dependency, but not even that, just creating a community of artists to feel free and loved and accepted in, because there are so many people telling you you're not okay when you know that you're just very aware of things that most people are not aware of. So my question for you is, at the end of your life, in 50, 80, 100 years from now, when you look back on everything you've done with this sense of control and direction of where you want to see the future going, what do you want to achieve with everything that you've said? Because you are so aware of so much more than most people. So what is your end goal at the end?
Okay. Kicking things off with a little light. was really right there with you when it was like 50, 80, 100, each of those lengths of life I was living. Well, I think I can't say an end goal thing, but I will say, like, we were talking the other day, I was telling you about, like, I was saying I don't feel insecure, but I'm not satisfied with my work, and in a new way. Like, I just had a new awareness of a way that I is like an itch, like and that all I could do was keep trying, and that feeling is like an alive feeling, and it has to do with like listening and looking and to things around me, and to like my relationships and friendships, and those things make life itself and then work, the way, the sort of thing through which I live, kind of a very a sort of state of unrest, and it's sort of like something that's always turning over, and I guess what I always just hope is that can keep happening, that it can keep feeling like fertile and alive and uneasy and unsettled, and that means that there's real kind of engagement with reality, as much of it is, sort of exists in fantasy, that it's kind of meaningless unless it's really embedded in like right now, and in this like earth and people now. So that's what I hope, when I have like, when I have candles to wish on, I really just wish for like things having to do with like my son and health and stuff. But when I'm alone lying in bed, I hope for that. Yeah.
I might have to ask another question.
Well, that isn't up to me. I was told I don't get to call on people. We might have to circle back and out of fairness.
There's guidelines established in the beginning.
Right.
And now I see why.
Yeah.
Hello. Could you say maybe a bit more about your character and the relationship with your daughter?
Yes.
And insofar as this movie touches on issues of mental illness, I mean, maybe this is a crude question, but did you have a sense of the kind of diagnosis entering in, like what problems that they might be having?
Well, I kind of yes and no. I talked with Josephine about that, and she has someone in her life who has a diagnosis, and she knows a lot about that. And we would talk about that, but she'd also say, I don't want to make this a movie about that specific form of mental illness, so you don't need to get too hung up on that, but let me tell you some of the sort of practical anxieties. This is the kind of thing you'd be worrying about. You would have been in the emergency room a lot of times. You would, be changing medications. It'd be very hard to pin this thing down, and you'd be so scared all the time that things are going to go off the rails, and you'd be scared for yourself physically. Your other child would be the easy child. Like lots of sort of just things that would concern my character in a day-to-day sense, and that was super helpful. All the way through. I'm remembering not that long ago doing like ADR for the movie, and her reminding me of some things again, about like what it would be like. So she has a real clear sense of it and gave me just enough, I guess, but didn't. I think has consistently not wanted to like pin it down or say it's this, because that I think those communities would inevitably be like, what are you talking about? That's not how it is. Yeah.
And it's also like mixed with maybe teenagers.
Right.
With its own
Right.
diagnosis.
Yeah. And that was so much of the actual experience with with Helena, with my daughter too. I mean, I would, we would come to set, and she'd be like, "Oh my God, I was at this club last night till 4 in the morning, and I met Leonardo DiCaprio." And I was just like, "What? I worked so hard to go to bed by 9:30. What are you even talking about? Have you slept?" I would just fall right into it,
Truly, her mother would be worried about her being. You would have been red flags about Leonardo. Keep him away from her.
Yeah, I kind of was. I was like, he would jump on you in a second. No offense, I don't know if he's here. I just felt like everyone would, I was like very protective of her. Yeah.
Ooh, way in back.
I didn't be able to.
Yeah, he's definitely.
Hi, thank you so much. So I was curious if the movie proposes a sort of solution for directors being so exploitative about their actors' emotions and getting them to use their pain for their own projects. So I thought by the end that maybe the solution was relying on the support of the other cast members rather than charismatic director. So I was curious what you thought the answer to that was.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think that's far off because, God, I'm remembering a moment when we're shooting, and you're shooting, every second counts. It's just you're racing the clock. And at one point, someone said, "I don't feel comfortable saying this line. It just doesn't and they I think they had workshopped all this, and that line had come out of it, but now it didn't feel right anymore. And suddenly, me and Molly didn't really know what was happening, but there had become a breakout group of all the people of color in the movie were just in a room, just having a round table with Josephine. Just stop everything, stop shooting, and just stop and talk about those issues, which is unheard of. I mean, I can't even tell you how the opposite of a set that is, and just in terms of money and time, and she really welcomes that. She's not afraid of it. It's exciting to her as oh, this is important. Great, I'm so glad you brought this up. Let's not skip over this. This is literally what the movie's about, and we've spent years on this, and we've come much too far to miss this opportunity, and that happened more than once, not about the exact same issue, but just about people's feelings and being there, and yeah, I mean, she really does the whole process because that is the work, and she enjoys it. She's not just trying to get the goods, and I wish, I wasn't part of that process. If she was here, or someone who was here, they could really say some interesting things. But I think that is the thing about this movie, and what, if there's a solution, it's in how this was made, which hopefully you can Google a great interview where Josephine talks about that. But the little piece that I saw was unlike anything I probably will ever witness on a movie set again. I mean, on most movie sets, that would be mutiny. It would be an issue for the Bond company, or something. Yeah. But it was only good. Yeah, it only helped us.
Was the director inspired by someone in her life,
Oh, as far as the story of it?
Well, yeah, but that's to the character.
Oh, the director was her worst fear of herself. And, she had discovered this actress, was totally captivated by her. I keep having trouble saying her name because she was Caitlin when I knew her, but now she's Helena Howard. Yes, so I think she just immediately, those issues were inherent to the moment they met, which was the beginning of this project. And so, she sort of acted out what she didn't want to have happen, and really workshopped all those issues. I mean, the mental illness part of it too, and and even, Josephine's boyfriend is African American. It's like all those things are part of her life. The idea of a biracial child, it's like none of these things are far from her. So I don't know. That was apparent to me,
So she kind of evolved as they were making it, like as she started to get these feelings working with Helena. I'm not.
I think so.
Yeah. We can look that up too.
We just have time for this one last question.
Hi. So I'm actually here with my friends from film school. And when you heard you were doing this, I thought it was super cool. So it's you kind of touched on this earlier. I don't know if you want to talk about it. But you're talking about how well you worked with a director, and you have very different styles as far as directing goes. As a woman and as someone who wants to pursue film, I can see how that could have gone very differently and kind of catfighty. So I think it's really cool that you guys work so well together. Is that an experience that you have fairly often working with other women in film, or is that a fairly unique experience?
Well, I haven't worked, that often with other women in film where I wasn't the boss. So I will say, I'm glad that she was the boss in this scenario where there was this and I think I don't think we ever would have thought. We've fantasized about making a movie together. I think it's genuine, our feeling wow, we are so different. Together we be unstoppable. This real excitement. And I'm not catfighty with anyone, so that's not going to happen. Yes, no. And except for this that we're having right now. I'm just kidding. I know that's happening. So that wasn't. If anything, I think sometimes just being a director, I would also sometimes go up to her on the set and say just so you know, everyone loves you, you're doing a really good job. These are not actually things that actors say to directors. It's really just something another director would know to say, because you think they have it all together, and they don't, and I know that. And you may think everyone hates you. No, we're all having a good time. We actually don't have all the problems you have. We don't even know what the problems are. Just on our phones. Just a little reality check for her, And she was like, what? Really? And no, we don't have a clue. So that was nice. I felt like I could, for whatever lacking I might have in acting experience, I could support her a little bit, just as a friend and a director. Well, I guess that's it. Thank you for coming. I know that unless you live right by here, this is far away for some people, and it's really nice that you came. And
Madeline's Madeline is playing here all the way through Thursday, so if you liked it, please tell your friends. Also, we have
nice.